Let me call the Monday, March 11th, 2013 meeting of the Boothbay Harbor Selectmen to order. We have I won't say a full audience tonight, but a nice audience tonight. How about that way? And let me introduce Kelly Bigos, our recording secretary, Tom Wooden, our town manager, J.D. Warren, Art Hathaway, Valerie Augustine, Bob Spillane, and myself, Bill Hamblin, selectman. The first order of business is to approve the minutes of February 25th, 2013.
I'll move we approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion?
I do have one thing.
Okay.
Can you also include the minutes of the meeting that was before there, where you went through your land use ordinance changes, the public hearing beforehand? Those were put in the mailbox today as well.
Okay.
I'll move we approve those also.
Yep,
I'm with it.
I second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance change meeting as well. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing
The only
none.
thing is I don't have them.
These are
Right
had.
there.
Yeah, I don't have the other ones.
Okay.
None if I lose them. That's fine, keep going.
All right, all in favor? All opposed? The motion carries. Next order of business is financials, and I'll turn the floor over to Julia Latter.
Total revenue year to date is $5,570,869.28. For expenses year to date, $5,412,395.17. Does anyone have any questions on revenue and expenses? Taxes are payable on March 14th, and we are quite far ahead in tax collection as of today. As you can see by the graph.
Yeah, it looks like we're a little ahead, you're saying.
We are. Definitely ahead of where we were compared to this time last year.
I wonder why that
For
is.
outstanding.
People want to get it out of the way.
I guess so.
Yeah.
There's more people paying.
Accounts payable is $272,089.19. And bank balance as of today is $2,612,328.
Looks good from here. Looks like we're on track.
So,
Any questions from any of the selectmen?
I have a
Nope, looks
question.
good. Valerie?
For the general assistance, do we just receive whatever we give out?
50% of it, the state is behind in what we are collecting for revenue. We just received November's reimbursement.
The state's behind? How could that be?
We just received
Going to the
November's
hospital.
reimbursement.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, so.
I just
On the
noticed.
15th of every month, we put in for reimbursement, so we're behind in that collection.
But we do anticipate getting that money.
Yes, we do. Probably in August, we'll receive that.
Got to pay the hospitals first, apparently. Any other questions?
We are under what we spent this time last year for federal assistance, so that is done.
Thank you, Judy. Brings us to town manager announcements. Tom, you have the floor.
The only one I was going to have was discussing the warrant, but I think you're going to do that a little later on in the meeting.
I was going to bring that up under new business.
Yeah, so no, I don't have any announcements.
Okay. That moves us to liquor licenses. We have 3 renewals before us, Balmy Day Cruises, Captain Fish's Cruises, and WPJ doing business as Red Cup Coffee House. The Balmy Days is for Malt and Venus, the Red Cup is for Malt and Venus, and Captain Fish's is for Spiritus, Venus, and Malt. I would entertain a motion.
Move we approve all three.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve all 3. Tom, I don't see the police chief's stamp on any of these that I have. I may have not the latest and greatest.
That's because these are state licenses. They're not local licenses.
I thought the Red Cup was,
You can get them to sign off on them if you like.
isn't the Red Cup local?
No, these are all liquor licenses.
Usually he puts a stamp.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember that he has a stamp of his initials on the local ones. I understand the cruise ship ones are different.
I'll be glad to have him sign off on them.
Yeah. I'm remembering that correctly, am I not? Yeah.
I'd recommend one or two just approve them pending his signature,
Yeah,
so I'll get him
yeah.
to sign it tomorrow.
Yeah. Is that okay with
That's
the
fine.
motion?
Yeah, sure.
And the seconders? Any further discussion on these? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. That brings us to our first public forum, and I'll turn the floor over to anybody in the audience who would like to speak. Please stand and identify yourself and tell us where you live. Going once?
No, I'm just waiting. Is there anybody else? No? Yes, I'd like to speak.
Yes.
Okay. My name's Frank Fassett, resident of Boothbay Harbor. I have some housekeeping. It's going to be my bi-weekly inquiry as to the parking ticket. If there's anything developed on that.
Not since we last spoke.
What do we need to do to expedite that?
Put it on the agenda.
Okay, that brings me to my next point. Looked on Facebook, looked on the town website. Did it go out on Snapchat this week or something? Was there for 10 seconds and I missed it? Or is there an agenda anywhere? It's not posted outside?
I don't know. I would
So I'm a
comment
little-
on it.
I can answer that, Frank.
Great.
The agenda came through late last week. I had Friday off. I didn't get it till Monday. The generic agenda, which I usually put in the paper, was in the paper, but the one that they had that has a few details on it, I don't know if that got posted anywhere while I was away. I don't think
It appears that it did.
Yeah, well, it was in my email, so I didn't see it
and-
till Monday.
And to me, as a town person trying to prepare for this, that's unacceptable to me, to have that not there, you guys. And, man, really, we've got to take this seriously. And I understand things slip through, but it needs to be there every single 2 weeks. And I'm going to bring it up every time.
Okay.
It's just, it's not okay. And speaking of websites, this brings me to my next point. I'm still on the website as being on the planning board. I haven't been on the planning board in almost a year. It needs to be updated. It needs to be used. It needs to be freshened. It needs to be a tool. It doesn't look like it's being attended at all. You know, you go there, and the fact that I'm still there, and there's some other people that are still there that are no longer with the town too. And I just think that that reflects poorly upon what we're trying to do here. So I would ask that that be cleaned up. And lastly, the Boothbay Selectmen tonight, one of their things that they're talking about, because their agenda is very complete, is a request that I put into them, and somebody else also backed me on it, to try to get their meetings on alternating nights as to this meeting here, so that people like myself can attend both. And I'm in hopes, I'll go up there after this, I'm in hopes that they'll pass that. They seem very receptive to it. And then I would suggest that we do some cross-attendance. I would love to see one of you guys, or all of you, at theirs, and I'll say the same thing to them. They need to come down here and see what's going on. I mean, I know that there seems to be this wall that's up there, but we are all the same community, okay? We share a lot of things, and it wouldn't hurt to have happen. So that will be coming up if they do approve that, and I'm in hopes that they do. But it can't hurt. You can't. You got to be able to take away something every single time that you do that. So those are my housekeeping items.
Very good.
Michael, do you have anything?
I do, Frank. Are you finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, great.
They're choreographed.
I apparently.
Tag team. Mike Tomko, Boothbay Harbor. I'm unclear about the concept of the first public forum and the second, and because there wasn't an agenda, I don't know whether you're going to be talking about these things that I may bring up. So can you refresh me? What am I supposed to talk about now? What am I supposed to wait till
My
later?
memory is the reason we went to this is we've always had a public forum, and it's always been fairly early in the meeting. And someone, it may have been Frank, raised the point that he would like to respond to what transpired during the meeting.
Okay.
And we said, okay, one way to do that is to have a public forum. After we're done with the bulk of our meeting, we still have executive session and warrants, but the bulk of the discussion has already occurred at that point. So in my mind, the reason for doing this is the first public forum is for you to raise whatever you think we're not talking about or thinking about
Got it.
that's presumably not on the agenda otherwise. And the second one is to respond to what we've said during the meeting and about things that are on the agenda.
So I could consider this sort of like new business from the public forum side?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank
Does that
you.
work?
I just didn't want to be in the wrong order or out of place.
We're so structured here, it's, it would be hard for you to be out of order.
Oh, okay, sure. I'll just continue with what Frank was saying about the agenda. I was looking because I value my time, and I know you guys do as well. So just figuring out what to plan for. Didn't see it. I saw the old agenda put on Facebook from last week, or from the previous 2 weeks ago meeting, and that was listed there. So with that in mind, if Valerie is going to be no longer selectman, and it's my understanding she does the updating, is there a plan for who's going to be?
Yeah, we'll have to get somebody to take over that job.
Okay, great. We got a couple of months, I guess, to work on that.
I know.
Right? Let's see.
Unless you want to continue to do that as a non-select person.
Well, it's my fault that I wasn't up on Facebook, but it's because I was gone the last 2 weeks, but it's a good point to maybe have some cross-training.
Cross-training so they have
from
coverage.
people.
Yeah.
Sure. And just to pile onto that, there's no link on the town website to the Facebook site, at least that I could find. So in addition to guys like Joyce Amadeus, who's listed still on the planning board, who isn't, and Aaron Miller, who's no longer the deputy assistant town clerk. So those are just, I'm sure, housekeeping that you guys want to get taken care of. Let's see, which leads nicely to the next one. Anybody know what happened to Valerie? She got married. I know we congratulate the the Public Works for doing their job in plowing, and I know we congratulate the basketball, guys for doing so good. I think it's worth mentioning that Valerie's.
I think we should congratulate her husband. He's the one who won the prize.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I just thought I'd bring that out. Let's see. Frank was mentioning about Boothbay considering moving their meetings to. One of the reasons there is to boost civic involvement. And I know with our town meeting, roughly 2 months away, I'd like to at least bring it to your forefront and pose the question, as Jim Chaos has challenged his board, what are your guys' thoughts about boosting civic involvement? What thoughts and plans, do you want to try and work on? So I'll put that in front of you for your consideration. Let's see. That kind of goes nicely then with the strategic goals. Remember last June, I think it was Bill that mentioned that every one of the selectmen bring to the board, what are your list of strategic goals for the upcoming year? I don't even remember what those were, although I do remember JD had said that it was really important to link what's going on economically in the community to the selectmen. And to that end, I think there's conversation started with the chamber and some other things with the comp plan. But that's the only one that came to mind. So I just kind of wanted to rattle you guys.
Yeah, I think another one was the fish pier, and
Sure.
we're moving ahead with that, and we have contracts left for activity in the spring.
Okay.
Resolving the restrooms.
The restrooms
Sure.
is one, which I think we have resolved. So we've made,
Improving the process of community funding at budget meetings.
Yeah.
Did that.
Yeah.
I think we're on our right track.
Great. Do we have a status on the telephone poles that was mentioned a couple of meetings ago? That are in the sidewalks on Atlantic Avenue and Rhodes End.
Bruce, would you like to update him on that since I sent it to you?
Yes, Bruce Engert, Rhodes End. I'd like to offer an attaboy to the town manager. As of today, the 3 poles on Atlantic Avenue have been removed.
Oh,
The
good.
3 on Rhodes End have not. There still remains 1 transmission line, probably Time Warner. Tom has been in contact with me twice regarding this issue, and I think that's commendable. And I thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
And I look forward to seeing the poles on Rhodes End down in the very near future, and I'm sure Tom's going to follow through on that.
Great, nice job. Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Tom. And the last thing was, I hadn't heard it officially stated, and I was just like to hear it from Mr. Spillane. It was in the paper about the resignation, and I hear talk that you're not. So, are you officially here?
Yes, I've been officially here for, I think I resigned and I took it back 5 days later.
Great. I hadn't seen anything printed in the paper. If I missed it at a meeting, I apologize. I just wanted to have it
It
said
was
in
all
writing.
over the paper, Mr. Tonka,
That you're returning? I saw the resignation. I must have burned that one for the
Well.
wood stove.
hopefully.
So, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice? We're now into old business, and the first item of business under old business is the Water District referendum. So I'll turn the floor over to John.
I'll be real quick. John Ziegler, I'm the manager of the Boothbay Regional Water District, and we're back in front of you again to bring the second question to our charter change. We had a vote a couple of weeks ago to allow municipal officers to be able to serve as trustees. It passed in the town of Southport, it passed in the town of Boothbay, did not pass in the town of Boothbay Harbor, and it was light turnout in all three communities. Board of Trustees have asked me to come down here and get another bite at the apple. I'd like to introduce Kirsten Hebert. She's the Deputy Executive Director for the Maine Rural Water Association. She's working for us, and we're looking to put it back on the ballot for the town meeting.
Thank you. Good evening. I know you guys are familiar with these little blue packets. We've done this once or twice, maybe 3 times. Maybe the third time's the charm, right? And what I've done is prepare for you the various documents that the board will need to get this item on the agenda. It's my understanding that your town meeting is the 4th of May. And in order to go through the various process to land this for referendum vote on the 4th of May, I've provided you with makeshift calendars. So here we are tonight, the 11th, and tonight we're asking you if you would please file for us the order of the Board of Selectmen of the town of Boothbay for the referendum vote and public hearing on this. Boothbay Harbor, yes, actually, it does say that, so.
Can I point one thing out here?
Yes.
Is that the day of the voting, secret ballot voting, is Friday the 3rd. The public meeting
Is prior to, yes, it would be 7 days prior to that, yes. Although keep in mind, all of the dates on the calendar, you can do, they're no later than date. They would be, you can do them anytime according to your schedules. These are sort of the drop dead dates, so thank you, Tom, I appreciate that.
What I'm saying is it's a truncated town meeting, so the actual voting day itself is the
It's gonna be the
Friday.
third, it's gonna be the third,
So,
okay,
okay.
that's okay.
Right.
This schedule will still work
Okay.
with that as long as we're doing things prior to, so
Right.
it's got enough wiggle room. So I've provided for you the various documents. It'll be the public hearing notice, it'll be the order of referendum vote, it'll be the warrant. And so tonight, we simply ask if you would put this back in motion again so we can go through the steps, do the public hearing for that referendum question, which would allow the municipal officials to run to be a trustee of the water district. And again, it's not something that is required, that if in fact you are a select person, you do not necessarily become a trustee. You have to take out papers and go through that process. Happy to take any questions.
Is this a legal thing to do after we've just done it? We just had a vote.
You had a
So
vote.
you're sure that the state,
We were, oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead.
Within the water district charter, there are 2 years to get the vote to a successful, all 3 communities give it a thumbs up. So we've got 2 communities that said, yes, please go forward with this. So the district has suggested we'd like to come back, that his trustees feel very strongly that we'd like to try this again. So we'll bring the vote back to the community and see if it will pass.
sounds like a great plan, because if I fail on one of these motions here, maybe I'll keep trying it until I like the
Would you like to be a
outcome.
trustee? Yeah.
No. I think you need to be a water district for that to.
It seems that way. I'm just kidding. But you obviously have checked this out with the
Yes,
with the state
absolutely.
and with the Attorney General.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yep. Actually, the standard charter for which this information falls under, it follows the template, which has gone through the state legislative process and has been vetted by the AG's office.
There is a cost to the community in doing this. I'm sure that you're picking that up.
That's right, yes. The district pays the full tab for the cost of the referendum vote.
Tom, that's the point.
Yep.
You checking to see if they paid their bills?
No, no, no.
Why concern? I know I'm not supposed to comment.
Yeah, let's wait till the second public. We can ask them that. I would just add that I talked to a number of people who voted against that measure, and it was, I think in part due to a lack of publicity about it. They saw the vote sign outside, they didn't know what the hell it was, what the heck it was. They came in, saw this thing that said, I want to change something, and they said, no, I don't want to change it, I don't know what it is, so I don't want to change it. So I would recommend that you get some publicity out there about why this is useful and a good thing and should happen.
My board made the same observation that evening, and they did not get out their point of view at all as well as they would have liked to. They are going to, they would like another attempt at least to plead or explain their position.
An article in the Register or something.
There'd be a few things.
Yeah.
So,
Just so
I had the same
issues are-
thing. People would call me at the house, what are we voting for?
Right.
And, I agree with Bill that we need to put the publicity out there, make sure it's clear to everybody.
I hate to harp on this. but
It's okay.
The issue I was trying to get to was that it says here, to meet at the Boothbay Harbor Town Hall on May 4th.
Yep.
There won't be anybody here on May 4th.
Yeah, I just circled that in here. I've actually sent these to you electronically.
Okay.
So I can alter that date certainly, or you're welcome to alter it, whatever is easiest for you. I'm back in the office first thing,
I
so.
mean, maybe we can get the board to agree in principle to sign these and I'll change the date.
Based on the
Yeah.
amendment.
I just gotta say, my takeaway is that this one we need to act on tonight.
Please.
Okay?
Yes.
And I would assume that we need to amend it to say, submitted to the voters on May 3rd, 2013.
Yep,
That's correct.
that's correct.
Somebody want to make that motion?
well, before you do,
Okay.
is this, this is just Boothbay Harbor that
Yes.
will be voting?
At this juncture, yes, the other two communities have voted in the affirmative, so.
See, this is even better. If you get the answer you like, you stop. If you get the
Right.
answer you
You
don't
don't
like,
like,
you
you
just
keep going.
holding
Just
the
keep
lead.
going, persistence.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? Oh, well,
Is there a motion?
I'm listening.
go for it.
So I guess the question is, that I think Bob was asking before, and I'm not sure that we actually got an answer, but that this is allowed to have a revote on
Yeah.
the same
Yes.
question?
As a matter of fact, we are up against a time limit because that's what
The
was in
2
the
years.
legislation. We had a 2-year window, we've already gone over a year, we're coming down to the last several months, and this would probably be it. So-
I will also say, Valerie, I looked through the state statutes looking for something that said that you couldn't do this, and I couldn't find it. That doesn't mean it isn't there, but I couldn't find it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, you aren't going to allow public comment on this at this point?
If the board is willing,
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
all right,
Go ahead.
the floor is open.
My interpretation and opinion of what's taken place is, number one, we had a very small voter turnout, which was exactly the case at the last town meeting last June. Small voter turnout, or small representation of the town. However, that's the way things seem to be going in this day and age. And unfortunately, what is voted in, voted out, voted up, voted down at those small turnout elections are the will of the people. i.e., I don't think that you would be too excited or pleased about not being happy with this coming voter turnout, let's say, for the election of the Board of Selectmen. What you are basically conveying, or at least my interpretation of what you are conveying in this conversation is that it's okay, if you didn't get voted in, let's do it again. Now, I agree that if the charter of the water district allows them to do it, that's one thing. I don't believe that the town of Boothbay Harbor necessarily falls under the charter of the water district. The people of Boothbay Harbor have expressed their opinion, regardless of how few and small the voter turnout was. I think that it is only fair that you consider that if you are going to have this voted on once more, it ought to be at least a year from now. And that you ought to respect the vote that was tendered at the election. Regardless of what the people say after the fact, obviously it's self-serving. What's anyone going to say when a selectman asks them what they thought? Unfortunately, probably some of those people that communicated with you didn't even bother to come and vote. I'm sure that because the issue was raised in the paper, because there was some concern with the other two communities, that it probably was a hot topic for a couple of days. But I don't think necessarily that you need to go back and re-vote this thing. It's kind of the perception. If you look at your elected officials manual, it's not actually what the facts are in all situations. It's the impression that you leave with your voters. And I think that do another re-vote immediately would leave a very poor taste, and at least those that voted no at the last election, who had the time and energy to get out of their chair, out of their car, whatever, come down to the town office and cast their vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would also point out that if you look at the overall vote, as you just mentioned, Mr. Anger, the vote in Southport and the vote, I think it was in Edgecombe,
No, Boothbay.
Boothbay, I'm sorry, was also very light. So we're not alone. I don't, do you have the numbers of all three communities,
I
Tom?
just remember ours, it was 27 to 33.
Right,
That was
but
very-
the other two communities were,
It was under 50.
They weren't much different.
they were also very low.
I also believe the total vote was for. Is that not correct? In other words, Southport was very heavily for. Boothbay and Boothbay Harbor were neutral to slightly against. Yeah. Behind you, Martha.
I'd just like to mention that the times that the voting was open, it was out, I commute to work off Peninsula, and it was closed by the time I could get back. So I would have voted, but it closed, seems to me like it closed early.
It was 8 to 6.
It was still 6.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of the things that, because the voting turnout was very low, and one of the things that I want to stress, this isn't a vote sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. They have to endorse it, but this is a district-wide referendum sponsored by at the request of the Board of Trustees for the Boothbay Region Water District. We know full well we didn't do a very good job bringing the issue out last time. Trustees, it was blatantly obvious to them. All they're asking to do is to bring out the, an honest discussion on the issue, and just have it reconsidered. That's what the point of this is.
Then why isn't it being offered in Southport and Boothbay again? What if it gets out there and more people realize they don't want it?
It's only being offered if, it's a 2-year window. So in this instance, where it passed in Boothbay and where it passed in Southport, those votes will hold.
Right, so you got what you wanted.
We got 2 years to continue that election process, correct?
But-
Yes.
But that window's already over half shut. That was when the legislation was, or when the governor signed the bill to create the district, and there was several steps that we had to take, and we're at this point now. Really, the only election left, short of next November, is this.
And even to add to that further, there was the one referenda, which was simply the merger itself, whereas this referendum at this juncture is simply whether or not the municipal officials could serve on the Board of Trustees. So
Frank?
they've come quite a
Is there
way.
fear that non-officials are not going to run?
What's that?
Is there a fear that, it's open to anybody except who holds a public office.
That's correct.
So are we worried that nobody's going to run?
It's just a fairness thing to let anybody run.
Well, I think you're right, you didn't do a good job of getting the word out.
In some places, the people that are really motivated, and I'm not talking Boothbay Harbor or any place like that, but you have a lot of people that wear many hats and that are really committed to community endeavors. And right now you preclude people like that if they want to be in any,
Or you allow people that are not involved to get involved. I mean, I guess, you know, if we're saying that you didn't do a good job of getting the word out, I think Romney and Ryan would like to use that.
but this isn't an election like that. This is just a charter change referendum.
To me, as somebody in the public, it's a public vote. And I would also like to know what the ratio of voter turnout was. I mean, for the number of voters in Boothbay Harbor compared to how many came out and voted versus Southport and Boothbay too. I think you'll find that the percentage in Boothbay Harbor was probably higher, you know, penetration than it was in the other towns. But I'm just wondering what I mean, if there's a fear that nobody's going to run. I mean, we do have that problem on certain offices. And what the big concern is.
Isn't it true, though, that you have like trustee members that are actually selectmen over in Southport and stuff, that
We
have
do.
knowledge and stuff over there?
My question on that would be, if I'm a selectman here in Boothbay Harbor, and I get on the water district,
Correct.
I'm a good civic guy, and there's a position, there's a question that comes up, and that question is awesome for Southport, it's great for Boothbay, it's terrific for the water district, but it's lousy for Boothbay Harbor. Where do I go?
Well, you bring a different perspective to the board, don't you?
Do I represent my town or represent the water
To
district?
represent the conscience, I would think, right?
It's awful twisted. I mean, in my mind, again, you know, I'm just
I'm
looking.
just saying you wouldn't have that perspective now, really. Where that perspective would be brought to the board. And I'm speaking for board members, so I'm getting out there.
Yeah.
I'm a hired gun.
Okay, yeah, I know.
We are, we've been tasked and to move this forward again. Personally myself.
Okay.
And the board meets tomorrow night, if you want to bring these questions up to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just, I mean, if, and not just on a water district, on any two, when, you know, if I was on the refuse district and a selectman.
See, it's interesting because refuse district municipal officers can serve.
Because their charter's different, or?
Yeah, their
And-
charter,
and- Okay.
it allows it in their charter, and they,
Well, I would be awful nervous.
Let's bring this back to the decisions that we have to make. I understand the points that are being made there.
Okay, well, one last one, and then I'll be quiet. If you're gonna let Boothbay Harbor vote again to get the vote you want, I really think you're setting an awful hard precedent, in my impression, by not re-voting the other towns too. It's like, we got the answer we want here, we just wanna ask these guys again. Dad already said yeah, now I'm just gonna ask Mom. So, anyway, you guys, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I would argue that that's an issue for the water district, not really for us, and that would sort of be my response. I understand the points that Bruce made. And if it were our election, I would agree with you 100%. I wouldn't hold a second election, but I see our role right tonight as enabling the water district to carry out what is clearly permitted under their charter, using the municipal mechanism of voting. At least that's kind of where I sit. So I'm inclined to go ahead and allow them to have the vote, but I do think they need to publicize it. And I think your argument that they ought to have it in all three towns carries some weight, but it's not for me to decide.
Bill, can I just add one quick comment? And that's just my Tomco again. This has been brought up in front of the board. Why don't we give it a week, until the next selectmen's meeting, and see what they're, see what the feedback's like,
Well, there's an interesting point here. This one needs to be signed tonight, correct?
That's correct, and there is an opportunity for public hearing on this issue.
And then there are
specifically.
subsequent things we need to sign.
That is correct.
And we-
Just tonight is just the order of
Right.
referendum vote.
And if we were to have new information that would lead us to believe that this is a bad thing for the town, we could not approve these further documents. Is that not correct?
I suspect that to be the case, yes.
And then the election would not happen.
Yes.
So it seems to me that if we enable tonight, we have the opportunity to go forward or not. If we don't enable tonight, then we're shut down for this election, and perhaps for good. Any other comments from the selectmen?
No.
Do I hear a motion to amend the date on this from May 4th to May 3rd?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to change May 4th to May 3rd. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Do I hear a motion to approve this?
I move we approve the order of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Oh. And everything that it says here.
Yeah.
That we see in front of us. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on part of the selectmen? Seeing none?
Oh, sorry,
Seeing some?
discussion. In number 2, part of that question where we talk about the public hearing on the referendum question, I think, can we fill in a date? Do we need to fill in a date?
We don't have to fill it in tonight. What I was thinking you were gonna do was approve these 3 documents pending the date corrections and sign them. We can fill in what date we're gonna have the public hearing later on. We don't have to determine that tonight. As long as you agree in principle for these documents, we can set a date for the public hearing afterwards.
Okay, so the answer is we do not need to fill in a date, although we could if we wanted.
Well, I would just think we would want to make it ahead of when,
I think the last
These
time we
have
did
to
it,
go
did this
in.
in several different nights.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
it was kind of sloppy. It would have been easier just to do it one night.
As long as your public hearing is scheduled prior to the 23rd of April.
Which is easy enough to just schedule it before a selectmen's meeting, I'm sure.
And then, of course, the notice 7 days prior to that.
okay. Okay. All right, I get the calendar
Yeah,
now.
do it the 8th.
Thank you. Okay.
Do you want to suggest a date?
How about
8th?
April 8th? Yeah.
8th. So now this, what is before us reads that the town of Boothbay Harbor Selectmen will hold a public hearing on said referendum question on April 8th, 2013, and a notice shall be issued to meet to hold that public hearing.
6 PM like usual?
Yeah.
Okay. Easy enough.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 3-2.
So I'll change the dates on these and have them come in and sign these. Let you know when we get the signatures there.
Very good. Thank you.
44. Art.
I and Valerie. Next item under old business is St. Andrews Task Force Activity Report. I turn the floor over to Valerie.
And I missed the last week's meeting, so I, at this time, have nothing to report, though the next task force meeting will be the 3rd Tuesday of the month. And I would ask anybody in the audience from the task force if they might give us any kind of update that I may not know of at this time. And I apologize for being vague.
It's only your wedding.
Right.
Apologize for getting.
Yeah, I shouldn't apologize.
It was gone the entire 2 weeks, so that's it.
Valerie has offered to turn the floor over to anyone in the audience to fill us in. Going once.
Yes. Margaret Parrott. We were not on television that night either, which was very interesting because the tone of the meeting was much more relaxed. And
That
I
happens.
think- You know, we don't have that camera over. But Representative McDonald brought in his legislation. It has come out of the office that drafts these things, and there was a great deal of discussion about whether or not it was going to actually be presented. And I think at the next meeting, there's going to be quite some more in-depth discussion, and the group will probably take a vote as to whether or not we want to try to go forward with it. And in the course of discussion, Chuck Cunningham made a suggestion that it needed to go back for a rewrite, and that any mention of taxation needs to be taken out of the legislation. So it's gone back for a rewrite. And his suggestion about funding was emergency funding had something to do with taking it along the same lines that we do with the refuse district, whatever that means,
Yeah.
you know. So it has come forward, and it was discussed at length, and he has gone back to the drawing board with it to take out any suggestion of local taxation, which would be an emergency situation. But anyway, so that was very interesting. And I think the only other, what else was discussed that night? Just kind of a lot of housekeeping things.
Yeah.
And,
Was really a whole lot.
yeah, but
One,
the
because we
main,
were not-
item on the agenda that night, or the main thrust of the meeting, was this creation of a rural hospital district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
And then,
you.
of course, there was a lot of talk about the article in Time Magazine, which I hope you've all read. The Bitter Pill by Stephen Brill. You can find it online if you haven't read it.
Thank you.
And so I would say I will get the agenda and any supporting material for next week's task force meeting and send it to you all via email in case you're interested.
Terrific. Tom, question. When the refuse district puts their budget together and then comes to us and say, we need X dollars, do we have any choice in whether to fund that or not?
I haven't looked into the legislation behind it.
Have we ever?
I haven't, no. I
Yeah.
don't know if previous town managers have or not.
Yeah.
I've always been told that they just hand you a bill and you have to pay it, but I don't know for a fact. I
Yeah.
haven't read it that way.
Yeah. That was my understanding too, is that we get a bill, and from the water district as well, we get a bill and we have to pay it.
Just like the school. yeah.
So,
Yep.
You pay one way or the other. If You
Yeah.
either don't get your garbage picked up or you pay the bill.
right.
It's like the regional water board and the regional garbage district are the same, or the refuse district,
Yes.
sorry, are the same.
Yeah, I think it is the same-
Funded the same
the
way.
same model.
I was interested, I spoke to Jim Chaosis about the bill, and he in fact brought me back a retraction by Bruce of the word taxation. But I realize why you asked the question. There could be an emergency funding, or not so much emergency funding, but there could be a cost involved.
Yeah.
And I think at some point, it's probable that we should ask Bruce to come before us and explain what he's up to.
It's an excellent
Because
idea.
it would seem to be interesting.
That's an excellent idea.
Good idea.
I may have misspoken about, I've forgotten what the example was that Chuck Cunningham used, but everybody said, oh, that's the way to go. So, I don't know, you'll have to forgive me, I've only been here.
I think that's correct, Margaret, because that is the way these districts operate. The water district, the refuse district, presumably the hospital district would be the same sort of mechanism. And I don't know if we're splitting hairs or not about the method of money, but there certainly are mechanisms by which public monies come into these districts.
Right.
And whether it's called taxation or whether it's called a bill to the towns or, maybe a fine point.
So I think it would be valid at some point. Once Bruce decides whether or not he should file, I think that because it could have an impact on the taxpayers here, I think we should ask Bruce to come and explain in detail what he has in mind, so that everybody can ask the questions. That would be my recommendation, but I think it's not time yet. But I think there will be a time in the next few weeks that we should do that.
Yeah, I agree with Bob. I think he should come and give us a good, good lecture on what we expect, and I think it'd be a good idea.
All right. That's it.
Thank you.
That's all I had under old business. Anybody have anything else? Under new business, we needed to review the warrant. And you have provided us copies,
Fresh off the press today.
fresh off the press. I think I had two questions I guess there are three questions on the warrant for completeness. overriding question that we all know about is the funding amount for the ambulance has not yet been finally voted on by either the Budget Committee or the Selectmen. And I understand there was a meeting this afternoon which I could not attend, but I did get to speak with Robbie and Scott on Sunday for about 40 minutes. So I think I am current with their budget and what they're proposing. And I guess I would suggest that at the conclusion of this regular Selectmen's meeting, we hold a Selectmen's budget meeting to determine that number if that suits with others. So that's one item on the warrant. The second item is under Article 3. We have, it says, to see if the town will vote to authorize municipal officers to appropriate up to $400,000 of existing general funds towards the replacement of Public Works cold storage building. This is an important article for a couple of reasons. One, it's existing general funds, so it's not new tax levy. I want to make sure everybody understands that does not impose any new taxes on any of the townspeople. But it is an appropriation, and as we learned last year with fish pier items, appropriations need to have a recommendation from both the Selectmen and the Budget Committee, and that's missing from this warrant. So we need to both have the vote to create those recommendations and to modify this warrant to get those in here. I must admit, my memory is faulty. I know we discussed the cold storage building, and I know we said, yeah, we should do it this year, we've got the funds. I don't remember ever coalescing on a particular number. And that just
That
may...
number's an approximate number based on the one estimate we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had an estimate of 385,000
Okay.
before us.
So everybody's happy with that,
Yeah.
that number? Okay.
Just so you know, this afternoon, we didn't have a quorum of either
Right.
committee, so, but I did suggest to the people from the Budget Committee that they come to tonight's meeting, and maybe they could take a vote on it, and they decided to pass on that. But I'm gonna have to at least contact them tomorrow and have them come in and at least make a vote on this.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and at that time, if they wanted to change their recommendation for ambulance service, they could do it at that point as well.
Okay.
Because today they couldn't,
Okay.
although you could sense they wanted to, but they didn't have a quorum.
Well, okay. Did anyone else have any other questions on the warrant?
No.
I have a question. We have to do it Tuesday, it can't be done Wednesday? Is Wednesday too late?
For doing this?
Yeah.
No, we could.
At
do
our
it.
regular, no, I mean, the Budget Committee, do they have to come in tomorrow, or can they come in on Wednesday at our Budget Committee meeting?
Well, we don't have any more Budget Committee meetings scheduled, because today
Oh.
was supposed to be the last
We
one.
thought we were done.
Yeah, we thought we were done today.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I think we
Okay.
can do it, Wednesday of next week.
I don't want to prolong, okay.
I mean, I think that'd be the smartest time frame to propose, because it seems to have worked better than any other
Wednesday.
time.
Right.
So,
Does the board then want
I won't be here next Wednesday, but
to, I would like to have a full board for these votes, I guess.
I'm happy to do them tonight, too. I just-
Okay. Someone's told me we should have a full board for these votes, and I agree with that.
There are certain votes that a full board is appropriate.
So I would entertain a motion that the Selectmen support Article 3, support this appropriation.
So moved.
second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Selectmen vote to support Article 3 as it's written in this draft warrant. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Tom, procedurally, is it worth it for us to take a vote that we approve this warrant subject to insertion of the final number for the ambulance? Is that,
you could do that, at least sign the signature page. Yeah, you could
get that out of the way?
could certainly do that,
Is the
because
board
that's-
comfortable with that?
From a dollar standpoint, that's the only thing still out there.
Yeah.
So when do you propose to clear the ambulance issue?
After our regular Selectmen's meeting tonight.
Okay. Then that's fine. If you make that in the form of a motion,
I so move that.
then I'll second it.
All in favor?
Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, so I believe we have approved this warrant subject to the final ambulance number.
Okay.
Sorry.
Anything else under new business? Oh, I did have one other issue. It's really part of the warrant discussion, and it's a request for you, Tom.
Yeah.
Last year, we looked in some depth at our cash flow position when we were considering the undesignated fund and how it might be best used, whether it was to pay off debt or write down the tax burden or to fund some deferred maintenance items. And we ended up doing some of each, I guess. We did some maintenance items and we brought down the tax amount that we needed to raise and appropriate. We really haven't looked at a cash flow summary this year, and I would like to have that for next year. So I would ask you to prepare, as you did last year, a cash flow summary that showed what our cash on hand was, what the obligations are, and the obligations that I know of are the fish pier and the cold storage building for now. And pull those out, pull out the 8% emergency fund that we are required to have by law now, and see what is left over. And so we have that documentation as we go forward into this year and for next year when these issues will come up again. And I have last year's with me, if you can't find it in your records.
I may be calling you tomorrow.
But my guess is you have it somewhere.
I have it, I'm sure.
All right.
Okay.
I have another question about the warrant.
Yes.
We had this letter from Jeff Smith about chapter 170,
Oh, that was,
section 20.
you've already approved the minutes of that. That was for all the,
Yep.
for land use codes and all the ordinance changes.
It didn't seem like section 20 was in anything, though.
Well, some of them got removed. I don't know what that letter says, but there were
Yeah,
some that
there
were
were a
This
dropped.
one's
bunch that got
about the-
removed.
There were some that were dropped at the public hearing.
Section 108D, that's this one. It's Article 39.
Oh,
They got put
Okay.
in, they got put into in a different form.
Take it out.
okay.
So he was
Okay, great.
confirming that what we have in Article 39 is
I was
legally
looking
correct.
at 20, but it's 108.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's 108D.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that was in there.
Any other new business? That moves us to the second public forum. I turn the floor over. Going once?
I wonder if, just a point of information, the budget discussion after this meeting, is that open?
Yes,
Can we be here for that?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. All meetings are open. They aren't necessarily public hearings, but they are certainly open to the public. Bruce?
Inasmuch as I raised the question at the last meeting regarding certification of a MUBEC code officer, and have heard nothing in old business this evening, would you bring us up to speed and tell us whether we did it in
I
the
was-
past 8 months?
I was going to
Where
bring
we
that up
are?
under public forum for my ability to speak under public forum. Yes, what was raised at the last meeting was the code enforcement officer's authorization under MUBIC, and was the town at risk because he was not currently certified, and what steps we would be taking to have him certified. And I'm pleased to report that first of all, we have a letter from the code enforcement officer detailing the certification that he needs, the steps he is taking to obtain those certifications, and the date by which he will get those certifications, all of which occur before June 6, 2013, which will be the one-year anniversary of his appointment. I personally went back and looked and have, in fact, the State Planning Office's certification standards for municipal code enforcement officers to confirm that we do have 1 year with no...
1 year to get certified.
To get certified.
Not necessarily to exercise the jurisdiction of a certified code officer, I believe is correct. More importantly, my question was, if in fact we have been operating without a certified code officer since last July 1st.
No, he's allowed to function in that 1 year time period. And there is no liability to the town, and there is no cost to the town. And if there is something for which he is not qualified on, and you do need a third-party inspector, then the builder or the developer carries the cost of that third-party inspector.
Were you aware of this within the last 8 months, that he was not certified?
I knew.
As a board?
I knew, personally, I knew there were certifications he was needed to achieve. I didn't
I guess
know,
what I'm really
I didn't know the
getting to-
details of them, but I knew that he was in process of getting certified.
Who dropped the ball? Doesn't seem reasonable.
I'm not sure the ball's been dropped, as I said, he is.
Well, if you weren't aware of it, then the ball's been dropped.
No,
If you
but
were
I-
aware of it, then I would say fine.
What I said was, I was personally aware that there were certifications that he was working towards. I did not know what I said is, I didn't know the details of which specific ones and where, but I knew that he needed certifications and that he was working towards them. I now have I will say, thanks to your bringing this to light, I now have a much better understanding of that and have a detailed plan of how he is to reach those certifications.
I thank you for all of that, but I would then again say, you, Bill Hamlin, being the chair of the board is one thing. Was the board aware last July 1st that you had hired a code enforcement officer who was not currently certified? And was there a plan in place at that point to get certified? Or is this something that has been put together as a result of it being brought up at a more current date, i.e. 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, no, it was well in place well before 2 weeks ago, and I think, Tom, you can comment on
Could I
that.
just caution
Yeah.
everyone too? I mean, you're discussing a personnel issue at a public meeting without that employee even being here. Really, that doesn't settle well, let alone it's not fair to the employee to be doing this. So, I mean, if you really wanted to pursue something like this, you might want to do an executive session and invite Jeff to it. Have Bruce come to it too and talk it out, but I don't feel comfortable discussing this all on television.
Point well taken. I didn't think, since we were talking about names, that we were talking in general terms of a position within the town, that it was fair game. But I will respect whatever the board chooses to do in that regard.
Any comments from any of the other board members?
I don't think we should be talking about it.
All right, we will move on. Any other second public forum? Going once, going twice? Executive sessions, we have none tonight. Warrants, I need a motion.
Move we approve the warrants upon review.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the warrants upon review. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. That leads us to a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you all. All right. So you guys met with Scott and Robbie, and I think you may perhaps came to the same conclusion I did, that I now understand their budget. I understand that their income number of $490K is taking into account that they will not be closing the St. Andrews ER until October. So it's keeping in place the income they get from transfers to Niles from June to October.
That's right.
Okay, and that was my understanding as well. And that their expenses are planned on the same dates. That is, they are not ramping up on June 1st, but ramping up in
A little before.
a little before October.
October. Yeah.
And they came up with their expenses. And that led them to a assessment of the town of Boothbay Harbor of $191 and
636.
636,
636.
191, 636.
636.
636.
And my, in my discussion with them, we went through those various things. The only other thing I would bring to the table is I asked them, there appeared to be a difference in algorithm of how they computed the town subsidy between last year and this year. And when I asked them about that, they said, yes, there is a difference in how they compute the subsidy. And specifically, last year, what they somewhat erroneously labeled capital, which was really long-term debt commitments and payments that totaled $47,000 this year and totaled a somewhat smaller number last year, were not included in the funds that they were recouping from the towns. They their policy at that point in time was they would recoup those funds through their cash excess at the end of the year.
Fundraising.
The fundraising they had explicitly in the algorithm. But it was in the cash at the end of the year, and that cash at the end of the year went to those expenses and also went to their capital funds.
Right.
And last year, they had considerable cash, about $108,000. But they pointed out that their capital needs are significant. These ambulances cost about $150K. They only last about 5 years. They've got 3 of them, 3/5 of $450,000. It's over $100,000 a year. So it's not unreasonable to request that kind of money. And Scott made the point that while they did that last year, that really wasn't very good accounting, and I agree with him. In his attempt to insert more rigor into the process, they have included at least those expenses that originally totaled $47K, and now they've reduced to $30K in the amounts they need to raise from the town. And so the bottom line is, yes, there was a difference in the algorithm as to how they compute the town's amount. And for completeness, I should also say that they stood by their agreement to reduce their cost to the towns of the Wiscasset mortgage and $5,000 worth of radios.
Right.
So they reduced it by about $17,000, which is well appreciated, and I think they were operating in good faith, and I appreciate that, and I think that was very good. So if we just take their flat number with the 17K reductions, it would come to 191, 630, whatever.
363.
My only residual recommendation is when we had talked with Robbie on Wednesday night, we talked about removing about 40K of those expenses and about 20K of contingency. And he said, yeah, he thought he could do, actually, it was 20K of those expenses and 20K of contingency for a total of 40K. And he said, yeah, we can do that, but let me check the numbers. And he checked the numbers and came back and said, nah, we really can't do that. And then we got into the third discussion where we thought that the October date hadn't been properly accounted for, but it has. In the 191, that $20,000 of contingency is still in their request for the town. And I guess in my heart of hearts, I think that should be pulled out. I think they've done a good job. I think they've been direct and forthright and honest. I think they have been conservative, appropriately so from their point of view, in trying to cover what they think is not necessarily the worst case, but a conservative case. I think they'll make it okay without that contingency. I really do. And I hate to tax the people of Boothbay Harbor for something that has a good chance of not actually being needed or spent. And so my heart right now would be to removing that, along with the statement that if I am wrong, if we are wrong, I have no problem of going back to the town in a special town meeting and saying, we were wrong, they need more money, let's have the special town meeting and raise those funds, and advocating for that position. And we'll have an opportunity to do that because part and parcel of these discussions, and I'm saying this more for the TV and perhaps the audience, is an understanding, while the details remain to be worked out, that the ambulance will come to the towns with their actuals as the year progresses and say, we're halfway into the year, we have spent this much actuals, we think we need this pot of funding, and we will say yes, and give them that pot of funding. And if those actuals look like they're going to exceed what we have authorized, then as I say, I would have no trouble in lobbying that we authorize them more. My sense says that's not going to happen. I think without the contingency, because there are contingencies built into line-by-line items, I think they would be okay. That's my personal view. And that would reduce the Boothbay Harbor amount from 191 to 188. And I did, but it's in another pile of papers.
It was 181.9 something, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the first time, but this This is the fifth time around.
80.
I'd like to comment
Please, while
on
I'm
this.
going through the...
I think that the five of us plus 8 of the Budget Committee reviewed Robbie and Scott's presentations, and they're wonderful people, but they're lousy presenters of facts. And I mean, we reworked their budget for them a couple times. But an interesting thing that I think was not lost on all of us was the fact that Dr. Foray from Lincoln County Healthcare came and offered us the sum of $121,500 towards the cost of operating the ambulance system, subject to their moving out of here in October. We asked him, several people asked Lincoln County Healthcare how they worked up that number. And if you remember, they specifically said that they had worked it up from the ground floor.
Right.
And I have to say that as an operator of a hospital, I suppose that while they have not been exactly wonderful in the way they presented things, one would expect that that number, when added to the $40,000 that we had paid as a subsidy to the hospital, to the ambulance service in the previous year, uniquely seemed to come up to $161,500. Yet when we did the numbers from the ambulance service, 13 of us came up with a number of $166,000.
Right.
And those numbers jive pretty well. And I think that Dr. Foray made a good point when he said, well, the complete shutdown of the emergency room is not really so much a complete shutdown as you might think, because the emergency room will exist, except you won't be able to get carried there by ambulance. So they expect to continue to do 80% of all the work that they had done before, between the hours of, 8 to 8 in the summer, and possibly 9 to 6 in the winter. So the 166, basically, or the 161, whichever number it was, which either of those two numbers it is, the 13 of us, if you remember, put a caveat on that and said, look, we need to review that number every 3 months. They will have to present to us, that they being the ambulance service, a proper billing that will show exactly what their expenses were, and we'll pay on that basis. And it became clear to the 13 of us that that at least for 3 months, nothing would change at all. July, August, September. In October, things would start to change. So in the second quarter, there would be some meaningful information. But we've continually, and all 13 of us have said, and that doesn't change, that we would review the numbers quarterly, and that we would also go back to the town and ask for more money, should more money be required. Lincoln County felt that their numbers that they had worked from the ground up were based on a model that was slightly less conservative. I'll put words, their words, slightly less conservative than the one that Scott had worked up. So 13 of us agreed with that number. If you took 17,000 out of the 191,000, what is that number?
I don't have that number. What I took was 20,000 contingency out of the 191 number.
So
It
that
came to
would give you 171.
181,906.
20 from 90 is 70.
Well, it's 20, and then Boothbay Harbor gets 49%.
Oh,
of
okay,
it.
I'm sorry, you took the 49%.
Yeah.
So it's just a question of semantics, really. The Budget Committee I would like to see the Budget Committee and the Boothbay Harbor Board of Selectmen go with roughly the same number. I wouldn't like to increase it necessarily, even though Scott has asked for it. It's not a big amount of money. It's 10 grand or whatever.
Yeah. I understand all that you said. My only difficulty with that is that 166 number we arrived at, and although you're right, it had some symmetry with
Yep.
the hospital number. But the assumptions we were using at that meeting were in fact incorrect. And if you take a step back and look at the sort of the overall picture of the ambulance budget, I think it divides into three pieces. The first piece, because of the St. Andrews closure, is their income estimates are up in the air. And they've said they're up in the air, and they said they really don't have a good feel for how they are. And if you look at actually a graph of their history of the number of calls and their budgets, which kind of goes up, or from the audiences too, when kind of goes up. But interestingly enough, the town subsidy starts off and then kind of decreases a little bit each year. And the reason that their budgets were going up and yet the town subsidies were going down is that they were getting more and more income from transport. And that's what's been thrown into who knows land. And so they, again, conservatively said, we're not going to get anywhere near the transport income that we got. So that's the first piece. Their income has gone down. Second piece is the obvious one, is the mileage that they're going to have to do goes up. And since their costs are in some sense proportional to mileage, their expenses go up. And then the third piece is really a combined result of their feeling that they need to move from an on-call 24/7 operation to a staffed 24/7 operation. Because of the longer times, they feel that having people on call will be difficult, that calling people out in the middle of the night for 2, 3, 4 hours rather than 1, 2 hours will be difficult. And I find that argument credible. I'm not sure it's compelling, but it's credible. But they've moved to a staffed thing, and that's caused significant increase in costs in order to maintain the level of service that they're shooting for. And that's sort of, I won't say it's independent of the hospital closure, but it's a separate issue. And they may have needed to go to a 24-hour staffed position, whether St. Andrews was opened or closed, because it is getting more and more difficult to get people to essentially volunteer for a difficult task in the middle of the night, and it's cold and it's onerous, and people have other full-time jobs, and et cetera. So that may have come about. Maybe it's coming about sooner rather than later because of the hospital closure as a precipitating event. But it's, in some sense, a separate issue. So that's the third piece that's driving up the costs. And so you get those three pieces together, and I think the costs really are likely to be higher than the 166.
Yeah, I agree. I'll just say this, though, that it seems, based on the information both by the hospital and the ambulance service, that 1.08 emergency pickups each night is the most that anybody can come up with in the hours of 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. is the basic numbers. And I guess the serious discussion has been on the type of model that the ambulance service actually choose to try and emulate, and that they would like to put in place, but they admit they don't know. And the hospital says they don't know either.
Yeah.
And that's the quandary. I'm not against either number. If the bigger number, the 191 less 10, is okay with me, because we've already agreed that it's putting a number before the community, and the community will audit the number quarterly. And since we're going to audit the number, if the number's less than or greater than, the community will take care of that. And I think it's important that we have a good ambulance service, but not a luxury ambulance service. However, on that basis, I would go along with the 191, if that's, but based on the same set of rules.
Yes.
That we do the audit and we pay based on the audit, because that was a big deal.
All of this is based on that premise, in my book.
Okay, well, that's a good thing. Now, that brings me to why I said all that. I volunteered to attend each of the selectmen's meetings in each of the 4 towns and see if there was some common ground to get a consulting firm who knew how to set up an ambulance service. If there was some interest from the 4 towns to do that, how we might go about funding that, and how we might go about pleading our case with Lincoln County Healthcare for them to fund it, and also to possibly recommend somebody that was better known to the medical world than any of us, because certainly I have no idea on how to set it up. I would probably overdo it, and it would cost us $200,000 or $300,000. But I think there is a balance, and I don't think that, I'm not saying that Scott and company are not capable of making that decision. They'll get there by experience, but we might want to look forward, and I think the 4 towns might want to do that. So I'll continue along those lines if you see some merit in doing that as a group.
Sure.
I see merit in that study. My model is probably more to have such a study to provide alternatives to Robbie and Scott to implement, rather than a separate organization. But certainly having that information is worthwhile.
Well, it might help guide them.
Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
To guide them into what sort of model we might be able to afford
Right.
as a community, and what we really need as a community.
Yeah.
We may not be seeing the whole thing, but an expert or an expert company that does this for a living, I'm sure there's one out there, and I'm sure that we ought to be able to get that information from the hospital or a hospital, or I'll find out. Believe me, I do that sort of thing as you do.
Yeah.
So I'll find out who it is, and I'll see if I can come back with some cost and see if we can figure it out. All right, well, I've said my piece.
Valerie?
So the quarterly billing idea, what happens if we recommend and allocate more than what the quarterly bills, what happens to the excess money?
Yeah, and that's exactly the issue. The reason I'm perhaps niggling about going from 191 to 181 is because although we may not give any more money to the ambulance, we still have to, if we agree to the higher number, we still have to tax at the higher number. So I'm hoping to tax at the lowest possible number that is comfortable for everyone. If we do not use all the funds, it goes into the general fund.
Okay, and then what happens if the quarterly statements come higher than what we allocated at town meeting?
Then we will have to have a special town meeting to appropriate additional funds for the ambulance service. And I've personally committed that if their quarterly amounts show that they need more funds, I would lobby for such a meeting.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And have a special town meeting, is that like having the special water, would it be a written ballot vote, or would it be?
Well, you'd probably do the same thing. What it does involve, though, is sending out the tax bills again,
Yeah.
revising the tax bills. It's not as easy as.
It's not easy, and it has some cost to it, but I think I asked you the question earlier what the cost was, and it wasn't a huge cost. It was hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars.
And it's once in a year.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to do it. We're going to have to do it, maybe.
You might find it's actually easier to do a referendum question asking for permission to take it out of the general fund.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
rather than
tax everyone.
exactly.
Because
It'd
if,
be a lot
if,
easier.
yeah, we've already discussed it, if it got close.
Right.
Yeah.
Certainly, the undesignated fund could handle that for a
Right.
period of some time, and we put that money back at the next town meeting,
Right.
should that,
Right, that would
should
be
that
the way to
happen.
do it.
Would
Yeah.
the selectmen have to do a referendum to have it,
Yeah.
that money
Yes.
Right,
authorized
yes.
to come out of undesignated?
Yep.
Yes,
And,
that has to be a town vote.
Whether it's out of undesignated or general funds, I think you could take it out of general funds. I don't know if this would be considered an emergency under our,
Yeah.
No, but in a nutshell, I mean, suppose it was $500,000.
Well, that
then-
might be an emergency.
No, all I'm saying is, if it looked like it was going to be $500,000, then you have to tax the community on that basis now, or starting at the next tax. So if you could logically say, well, it's going to be close to 200,000, but it won't be probably more than 190 or 181,000, then on that basis, if it were to go over, it probably wouldn't go over by any more than, say, 20 or 30,000 bucks.
And that we could handle.
We could handle that. But if you don't go for the, like Bill says, the biggest number that you can legitimately say somebody has tried to prove, and we're all pretty close. I mean, we're within $20,000,
Right.
which is not bad for 13 people in this town to come up with a similar number for a change. But here we are, and I think that we just go for the bigger number, and we test it.
I just want to say, I'd like to go with the 191,636.
Let me throw something out that I swear at the last budget meeting too, was if you did go with that number that they were asking for, given the fact that on the other side, we had saved money in our municipal budget, and this does have an increase to it, if you went with that full number, the total increase to the budget is $58,000. It's less than 1% in a $7.5 million budget. So
Right.
that in itself isn't going to manipulate the mill
It won't
rate.
change the mill rate.
The thing that will is the school and the county budget.
That's
when it
right.
goes up.
Yeah.
So the tax rate issue really isn't crucial at the moment as far as that one item.
Okay.
The big ticket items are the ones that will impact it, so.
Yeah. To be blunt, and I said this to Robbie and Scott yesterday, it's not so much the extra $20,000, because it is fairly small. It's certainly small on our tax base. It's relatively small even on their budget. But it's so hard to move backwards once you've funded a higher level. And I would like to keep some tension on them.
Yeah, me too.
To be as frugal as they can and still meet all their commitments and so forth.
So what is the other number, Bill? 181?
Well, JD would like the 191,
636.
636, and I'm lobbying for 181,906.
I move we, oh, sorry.
Sorry, do you mind if I?
No, go.
Okay, just, I think maybe two more questions. In order to get the question on the referendum, is it just a majority vote of the select board?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And is there any way to put in a provision? I completely believe you when you say you've made the personal commitment, but is there a way to make it more of
I
an
may not be
official
there.
commitment? Is there a way to make it an official commitment that says, I mean, we can't promise that the board will vote
Right.
yes
Whatever-
to
Can't
even
vote-
put the
can't
referendum
vote in
forward.
ahead.
Whatever the next board
Good
is
ahead.
after.
No, the way to do that is to vote the higher number.
Okay. It seems, it's looking to me like it's easier and, I guess you would say more conservative to go with the 191,636.
Yeah, I just don't want to raise more taxes than we need.
That's the only problem.
In some of this conversation, this has been more about how the process wasn't really very clean and neat rather than the dollars. Because you're right, the dollar swing here is relatively
Yeah.
low. It's just,
Yeah.
their
Remember, it's-
expenses were very well explained and their revenues were just a
Good, yeah.
disaster. And
Yeah.
that made everybody, I mean, we've met with them for 6.5 hours so far.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, they've been wonderful, they've been direct. When they know, they tell us. When they don't know, they say, we don't know. It's
They've
not a
been-
comment on
Yeah,
them.
yeah, I thought they were clear about
They weren't,
the
though.
question marks.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, is that
Yes,
they,
right.
they
Yeah.
knew what they didn't know.
Clear about the question marks.
Yeah.
That's what they kept saying. We
So-
really don't know.
But
And you
I,
can
said that
appreciate the
today.
quarterly billing,
I-
Said that today.
they are looking out for and trying to preserve for their organization a number that will keep them comfortable that they'll be able to maintain operations, and that's what they should be doing. And I'm trying to lobby a number that the town is comfortable with and will protect the taxpayers and still allow them to operate. I'm not hard over if we decide we want to go with a higher number.
I
I'm
agree
okay
with the
that.
181. I don't think this is the year that they should be adding in for a contingency when they have a dramatic increase in there.
I agree with Art.
And they have cash on hand. It's not like they'll be squeezed.
They have a lot of money, actually. They have, what, $250,000 in assets?
Yes. Oh, actually over that.
Oh, yes, 270, isn't it?
It's over that.
They have 270 in CDs and 100K in cash.
Yeah.
So they're not exactly short of $1. Let's put it that way.
I mean, and what is their budget, roughly $800,000? $10,000 in an $800,000 budget
Yeah.
isn't crucial.
So you wanna go with what, Bill?
181,906.
$10,000.
Yeah, I know, we're down. On the other hand, it pains me to say only $10,000.
I don't like to give somebody what they asked for, exactly what they asked for. It's 10%.
I guess I have another question too about the budget committee recommendation. Are they planning on changing their recommendation?
No.
No.
They weren't, they were hard fast, they've had enough. Yep.
They feel that the 166,555 is the number.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
That's the number they
So-
keep
But you
saying.
know, let's be fair too, there wasn't even a quorum here to make that decision.
Right.
There was only two. So, I mean, when I send out the email tomorrow insisting that they come back to look at Article 3, I'll give them the opportunity to look at this again with a quorum, because it really takes a quorum to say yes or no, we
Yeah,
want to change.
right,
Not
that's
just these
true,
two.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I think there was some remorse. Don't you guys agree that they
Yes, I do,
couldn't
yes,
have
I
done
do.
something today?
Yes.
Because I think they would have.
Or there are three of them?
Two. Pamela Payne.
Yeah.
Marion.
Yeah. So, I mean, they'll get that chance next week.
so, at the town meeting then, when there's two different numbers,
They'll
it kind
choose.
of immediately opens the floor up for discussion, or is it whoever?
People will choose whichever
Oh, yeah,
they,
it's open up
Makes the
discussion.
motion.
Yeah, so whoever makes the motion removes their favorite number.
Right.
And then it will either stand or it will also, if it's the smaller one, I'm sure it will be amended to the higher one.
but the people have the right to choose.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
Okay.
People,
So it's one or the other.
all right.
I would say, I think I'm still for the 191,636, but
Maybe you should
Make a
vote.
motion.
Time to vote.
I'll move we recommend the 181,906.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for 181,906. Any further discussion?
Oh, that's good.
All in favor? All opposed?
I changed my mind.
All right, 4-1, it passes.
I'm not gonna worry about
Okay.
10 grand. Oh, yeah.
I have so many boxes on this sheet, circle say, final number.
We don't know what we're.
Yeah. So the selectmen's part of that is over. We just have to get our budget committee to meet and go through. Okay. You're gonna close your budget part of the
Do
meeting?
adjourn.
Move to adjourn? Second, all in favor?